Hi everyone, and welcome to the Web Ready Blueprint System series of webinars, or should I say live on-air hangouts. The Web Ready Blueprint System is basically an online preparation system that covers all aspects of what you need to do to have a more effective online presence that gets results. So what we're talking about today is how to, or about preparing to build a successful website. And our guest today is the awesome one and only Mitch Nelson. Now, he told me that I have Biz Ingenuity, who he's one of the owners of, but he told me I had to do a compliment sandwich and that there had to be something good on both sides of it and something, you know, not complimentary in the middle. And the funny thing is I just can think of what to put in the middle of the sandwich.
Yeah. Have a hard time with the compliment.
When he said that, I thought, I can't think of anything that should go there except that his wife's better looking than he is.
That's very true. No, that works. That's fair enough.
He has a beautiful wife.
Okay, now I need 2 compliments. No, that is a compliment.
No,
So
Mitch is one of the presenters at our live workshops because he is so good at what he does. So I think that you're going to enjoy this ride. So we'll just go ahead and we'll get started and turn it over to Mitch.
Well, thank you, Leslie.
Take it away.
Yeah. So today we're doing a little bit of a discussion style presentation here. So just feel free to ask questions as you have them. I wanted to chat with you. Kind of focus on what it's going to take to build a successful web presence. So we're gonna go over the very basics and start from square one. And some of you might be further along than where we're at, but I think it's important for those of us here and also those who are watching from their homes or offices to understand, you know, from the very beginning all the way through to, you know, launching your website and making sure it's successful online. You know what that process is. So. I apologize in advance if some of these things are a little basic, but that's where we're going to start. In the future, we'll cover a little some more advanced.
It's always the best place to start, is it?
We'll start at the beginning. Let's do that. So the first place really that I would start as you're starting to conceptualize. Maybe you have your business idea or you're conceptualizing your business idea. One of the first places I always recommend people start when they're starting to work on building their website is the domain. You always have to start with the domain. Now, you may have an idea of web partners you want to use. Maybe you're thinking, hey, I'm looking for just some free or cheap solution. Regardless of what that situation is, my number one recommendation to you is make sure that you are the owner or the registrar of your domain. You don't want your web developer to own your domain. You don't want your brother or your cousin to own your domain.
Or your employee.
Or your employee, exactly. You want to own that domain because if you ever choose to make a change in your web presence, let's say you start cheap, and then a year down the road sales are up, and you want to build a beautiful website. Well, that a lot of times is the biggest headache. In making some sort of change online, or if you even change developers because of a bad experience in the middle of a project, that without fail is always the biggest headache, is trying to get the domain away from somebody that you're trying to pull business from. Make sure that you own your domain. When you have an idea and you know what you want to call it, get online, get on a GoDaddy or a
Web Ready Domains.
WebReadyDomains.com. Yeah, go there first. And register your domain. It doesn't cost very much. What are domains now? .coms are like $12.99 a year.
Some of them are less.
Yeah. And with coupon codes, I mean, you can get them down to $8.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen them on specials. I've seen them as cheap as 99 cents a year. So.
And one thing to note too is that buy different versions of your domain, because you can use those for landing pages and different things like that we'll talk about later. So it doesn't hurt to buy different versions of it, not only in the .com, the .net, the .biz, whatever those are, but also, like for me, I have Web Ready Blueprint System, I have Web Ready Blueprint, and I have various other versions of that. So don't hesitate to do that as well. Or if you haven't made a final decision, go ahead and snag a domain, and if it doesn't turn out to be the exact name you want, then you can always use that for something anyway, because there's other
Yeah.
uses you can have for a domain that nobody's going to know what the domain is, because it's
Yeah.
going to redirect to your main domain.
Right, absolutely. And because they're so cheap, I would also recommend thinking ahead to future strategies. If let's say that you own a shoe shop in Sandy, Utah, well, maybe the name of your company is Dave the Cobbler. Well, DaveTheCobbler.com is awesome for your website, but think ahead to some of your search engine optimization strategies and your online marketing strategies. You're going to want to have ShoesSandyUtah.com. And others, shoe repair sandyutah.com, other domains that are centered around keywords that you want to use, because in the future, when you have some money and a budget for marketing, those are great things to plug landing pages into to drive more traffic to your web presence. So kind of think ahead. Because it's cheap, that's not a hard thing to do. Snag those and just renew them every year at $8 would be something that I'd recommend. People always ask me, well, where do I draw the line? I could do 100 domains. I could do 1,000 domains. Draw the line at your budget. If you can afford to do 1,000 domains and you want to own that space, then great, do it. But if you're on a shoestring budget and trying to cash flow a new startup business, maybe 2 or 3, even 1. You don't need to overdo it. So.
Any opinion on the privacy setting for that Whois database?
It really depends on what you're doing with the. From my opinion, it really depends on what you're doing with the website. In a lot of cases, it doesn't even really matter. In some cases, I've used the Whois to contact business owners before.
That's what I was going to say. Just for any of you that don't know what Who is, it's a domain you can go to and you can find out who owns a domain. So if it's not set as private, then people can find you that way.
Yeah.
If you don't want people contacting you, because you will get people that do SEO, that do all different kinds of things, that will contact you and try and sell you.
Yeah.
But it's not terrible. And
No.
sometimes it can be a good
And sometimes
thing.
it's customers looking for you.
Right,
So.
because like Mitch said, sometimes that's how he's found
Mhm.
people, and same with me, that I want
Yeah.
to connect with. So
Absolutely. So it really comes down to preference. The privacy setting. If that's something that you want to keep private, realize that when you buy a domain, it is on public record, so people can look that up. So that's a great question. Keeping that in mind, if you want it private, that is available in with most registrars.
Well, what about the .com versus .net, .biz?
Mm-hmm.
And I know you can buy them all,
Yeah.
but say that doesn't seem practical financially,
Right.
then which one is the predominant? Is it
I would
still
always-
.com?
Yeah, I would always recommend starting with the .com. That's my opinion. Some people might say, it doesn't really matter. And it's more of a perception thing than anything else. It's more when you look at a company and, DaveTheCobbler.net, it's like, there's a cheapness to that. If it was .com, it'd seem a little more legitimate. So it's more of a perception thing, but in my opinion, you get a much better perception from a .com than you do anything else, even a .co. So I would stick with the .coms if you can. Obviously, if budget permits, buy up all of them.
because like I say, you can use them for different things. But like if somebody too, you tell them my website's Lana Maheny Group. I don't know why I'm doing that today. The Lana Maheny Group, and that's what they remember, but they don't remember. They're always going to put .com.
Right.
Always. So
That's
if
true.
they're searching for you, hopefully there's other ways they'll find you. But if they can't remember, if they remember the name of your company but not the website, that's the first thing that they're going to try.
So when you set up a domain, keep in mind that a lot of those domain registrars are really good at being a domain registrar, but they are not necessarily great at some of the other things they offer. One of the things that I can think of off the top of my head is emails. I'm just going to use an example. GoDaddy, for example, it's a great registrar. They provide a lot of services that I think are fantastic when it comes to that, but their email system is not that great. So don't be a sucker to all the upsells that you get when you're buying a domain. Shop that stuff around. There's a lot better. I mean, for example, Google Apps. You get to use the Gmail engine for your emails, and in my opinion, that's the best out there. I mean, it's the best there is. So, things like that. Keep that in mind. You don't need to buy everything they're selling you. The template website builders. There's stuff that you can get for the same price, which in a lot of cases is free or even really cheap. That's out there that will be so much better for your web presence and to represent your company and your brand than what some of these domain registrars have to offer. So keep that in mind. Which leads into the next topic, which is hosting. A lot of the domain registrars offer hosting. There's a lot of really inexpensive hosting companies out there. Now, for those that don't know what hosting is, I like to use the analogy of a car, right? So if you're building a really nice website, you spend $10,000 on your website, that's kind of a one-time expense. That's like buying a car. You're going to spend, $10,000, $20,000 on a really nice car, and you get that car. It's yours now. Whether you finance it or you pay cash for it, that's your deal, but it's kind of a one-time deal. But with that car, there's certain maintenance and there's certain things in order to be able to use that car, you have to budget a certain amount every month. Because you got gas and you've got oil changes and you've got tire rotations and you've got all that stuff that you have to focus on when you're a car owner. Well, it's the same with a website. And what I find is a lot of times, because of a lack of education, business owners will neglect the things that their website needs on a monthly basis. And so you get sold very inexpensive but very incomplete hosting packages. You get put on a shared server that you're just as, honestly, regardless of the security that they say that they have on their servers, you're just as susceptible to being hacked as anybody else. Are you getting emails with your hosting? Do your emails connect to your domain? Are you able to use your domain in your email? There's a lot of things that go along with that. One of the big things that I've kind of touched on a little bit is hack protection. What happens if you do get hacked? A lot of cases with these, $5, $10 a month hosting packages, that's your problem, is the attitude. Well, that's a big problem. And in cases where your website is, you're dependent on your website for either lead generation or sales conversion, that's a huge problem because your business is now at a standstill while you're finding a developer, paying a developer, and waiting for them to fix your site. And sometimes that can be hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. So having a service that's built in, that's almost like an insurance. We have insurance on our cars, right? That's almost like an insurance is very important to cover hack and virus protection. There are services out there. In fact, BizIngenuity, the company I'm with, offers in their hosting packages hack protection. If you get hacked while you're on our servers, that's our problem. We'll fix it for you. And usually that only takes a couple hours because we're prepared for it. Those services can cost, out on the open market as much as $50 to $100 a month just for the hack protection alone. So just kind of something to think about. The other thing is, am I getting backups of my website? How often is my site being backed up? If the answer is not at all, as you start to dig into it, well, that's a problem because your site is stored on a server somewhere. There is a physical hard drive somewhere in the world that has your website on it. Now, what happens if there's a fire at that data center? What happens if the climate control goes haywire and the servers melt? Or what happens if an asteroid hits hits that data center? That's a problem. Your website's gone, right? And there's literally no way to get it back if there's no backups of it. So the other thing is making sure that you have consistent backups of your website. Back to the car analogy. If you're buying just hosting, your $5, $10 a month package, it's like buying crude oil to put in your car. You need everything that's in that crude oil, but there's nothing really it's not helping you very much. You know what I'm saying? You need the oil for the engine, you need the gasoline for the car, but no one's really, taking the time to separate it out. So a barrel of crude oil, ounce per ounce or gallon per gallon, is cheaper than gasoline, right? Well, it's because of the process and everything. Pay a little bit extra, get what you need. Make sure that you've got, aside from just hosting, make sure it's quality hosting. Make sure you're getting your email addresses. Make sure that you're getting hack and virus protection and backups of your website, as well as technical support. You want to make sure that you've got someone that you can talk to if there is a problem. And you'd be amazed how hard it is to find technical support on those hosting sites. So make sure that that technical support is available to you. Any questions on hosting before we move on to the next bullet point here?
Updates, is that something we talk about?
Yeah, updates on your website. Now, some people that you may be able to find packages out there that offer a certain number of changes on your website, especially if it's the same company that built your website. Just make sure that you understand, and we'll touch on this a little bit later as well, but make sure that you understand the commitment, when you need to make changes, because your business changes, right? The economy changes, your business model changes, it's a never-changing thing. And you're going to need to make changes to your website. Understand the commitment. How much will I have to pay you to make changes, or can I make changes on my own?
Well, you were going to get that to later. I was actually meaning if they're using a theme or something like that, make sure that they get the updates done on a regular basis.
Yes, yeah, that's also important.
Because if they don't do that, their site's going to degenerate.
Yeah.
We had a client that was 19 updates behind, and her site has started to degenerate and not function properly, and things were disappearing and being corrupted. So it's really important to have somebody that makes sure that they take care of that too.
Absolutely. Well, operating systems update, browsers update. I mean, anybody who has a computer, knows that we're constantly updating all of the software across all the platforms. And so, along with that, to make sure that your website is viewable on those different computers, different browsers, you have to make sure that the framework is being updated on a regular basis. So that's important as well. Compatibility. So, as you start to get into the nitty-gritty of designing your site and knowing what it's going to look like, what the flow is going to be, a good place to start, and Leslie does an amazing job of diving into this in very fine detail. But kind of on a high level, put together a sitemap. A sitemap basically is just a hierarchical list of the pages on your website. So we've got, if we were to write it out in bullet point style or an outline form, you'd have your home page, and below that you'd have about us and services page and contact us. And maybe on your services page, if we're still talking about Dave the Cobbler, we've got shoe sales and shoe repair, etc. So you want to kind of lay out the flow of your website and understand, what your pages are and where they're going to be in relationship to each other.
And that's one of the things we cover in the live workshop really thoroughly too, and help you do that while you're there.
Yes, absolutely, and it's an amazing thing. So definitely to get more information on that.
Got to know the structure, where you're going. Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. So if you do that first, it's going to really help you in terms of creating your content and knowing what you want people to do once they get to your site.
Yes, absolutely. Obviously, part of getting into the design, an important part of your branding, and remember that your website is your branding. People are going to go there and they're going to get a feel for what your business is. If they get to your website and you've got diamond plate steel as the image on the background, and very sharp lines and things, that's a cool feel, right? It's a very streamlined feel and a very masculine feel, and if that's what you want to put forth, awesome. Go that direction with it and go all out on it. Make sure that your logo is something that matches that as well. So if you have a logo going into site design, make sure that from that logo, because your logo is kind of the centerpiece in your branding, right? Make sure that from that logo that your website is going to be matching that the colors match. And we'll get a little more into colors here in a second. Make sure that the colors match. Make sure that the background images and the different images. Make sure the lines or do you have soft curved lines, or do you have sharp, sharp lines? And in what way does that match your branding? So make sure that that's all there as well.
We got a question or some comments from the audience that are interesting. They're both from Adam Music. One is, and I really don't think Music is his last name. He's a really funny guy.
That'd be cool if it was.
Look at your domain this way. If you become successful, someone out there is going to create a domain close to yours or try to draw people away, create a scam, create confusion, etc.
Yes.
So that's a point. I mean, usually the comments are a little late, but that's a point to what you were talking about earlier about getting them.
Absolutely.
And he also, there was a big news report today that he points out, I guess Mike Bloomberg bought 50,000 domains, and they include things like Bloomberg is a wiener.nyc and Mr. Bloomberg sucks.nyc.
To prevent somebody from using those.
I guess.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. That's and that's a great strategy. I mean, he's smart for buying those up, because then no one else can,
But you know what? Somebody will always find something else.
Yeah,
so I don't know about that.
Well, and along that same line of scams, there's people who run very lucrative businesses buying domains that are commonly misspelled forms of Google or YouTube or Facebook or the most commonly visited sites online. So that is a fantastic comment. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Adam.
So diving back into the branding side, as we start to look at your logo and whatnot, make sure that your branding on your website is going to match. And especially if we're going the route, which I like the idea of templates and whatnot, as long as it's done right. It can be a very affordable way to build a website. Just make sure it's not make sure it's not cheap looking. If it's cheap looking, you're just hurting yourself with your own with branding. You might as well not have a website if you're going to be turning people off when they get to your website. So there's a level of quality there that we'll dive into a little bit.
You're planning on talking about templates versus, custom?
Like a custom, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
When you were talking about logos and websites, would it be better then to have your web designer help you with your logo? So, sometimes you can develop a logo and then you start working on the website and wish your colors were different or what have you.
Yeah, that stuff can evolve, absolutely.
Depends on your web designer.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And that's exactly where I was going to go with that.
Well, that was my question too, is are they involved in developing logos?
Yeah.
Depends on your web designer.
Exactly.
You get some web designers that are great, with graphic design and things like that, and you get other web designers that are great with process and function.
And they're
the
usually
best
not
ones
both.
are the ones, the best ones are the ones that can do both, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you might bring in a web design, or a graphic artist to help you make it look good, as far as that goes. And
that brings up a really good point. A lot of times, if you have both in one person, they're going to be really expensive. And so as you're starting to look for a web partner, they can be really expensive. As you start to look for a web partner, I always recommend looking for a team. Look for a company that, even if it's a small team, that has a diverse team that you can, that has a design side to it, a person that's talented or a team that's talented in design, as well as a team that's talented in development. That way you're getting the best of both. And then what happens if the designer's out of town? Well, that doesn't mean that production stops on your website. You have a team of people there that you can reach out to that can continue to help you with support and development and other things. So it's good to support local, stay local, but as far as working with individuals, that can be scary sometimes. And you've got kind of one point of failure there.
So Adam clarified something. I misread his comment. Hundreds of Bloomberg purchases, but over 50,000 New York City addresses already registered.
Oh, yeah.
NYC.
Well, and
taken off.
Yeah, it has. And the commission that kind of governs the web suffixes, the .coms and the .us, and they recently released, I mean, I think it was thousands of new suffixes.
Which is kind of cool.
It is cool.
Because some of the things that you can do are, for instance, if you're a trainer, you can now buy, summer body .training and things like that. Or, I mean, they've got a whole bunch of other ones. .construction, there's just a whole bunch that are industry focused that are out there now. They're a little bit more expensive, but they're way more targeted. So again, that's something we could talk a lot more about, because that's part of your marketing strategy as well. That could be very, very worth the investment of going in and purchasing some of those more specific domains.
Absolutely.
So just be aware that they're out there.
Yeah.
So do they have a .hoa yet?
I don't know. That's something to go look at. But I wonder how many people will think it's homeowners associations instead of hangouts on air.
Could be a problem. Huh?
Yeah, it could be.
Maybe you'll get customers from both. I don't know.
Are you going to talk about, because right now you're talking about when you're working with a web designer or a web company, about how to communicate? Some of the challenges in communicating?
Yeah, we can dive into that a little bit right now.
Okay.
Yeah, there's one of the biggest challenges, and I kind of understand this from both sides, because my responsibility at BizIngenuity is sales and customer service and marketing. So I work a lot with the customers. It's kind of my job to be the advocate of the customer, but I also understand, because I work in the office with the development team and the design team, I understand the frustrations they have as well. So you need to make sure that the communication is there from the beginning. Now, one of the things that I love about what Leslie does with Web Ready Blueprint is she provides an education on how to create content, how to create a strong call to action, and by the time you leave her workshop, you've got a workbook. I mean, that's literally that thick of all these things that you could basically take and hand to a designer and say, here you go. And honestly, from the other side of that, that's fantastic, because then the designer knows exactly what's going on. And I'll just use the example of colors. You may say, hey, I want my background to be blue. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, deep royal blue. Okay, yeah, we'll do that. But no, you meant, light blue. So, there's so many ways to interpret so many different things, especially when you're talking design, that you need to make sure that communication is there. Now, there are some developers out there and designers out there who are very closed off to communication. If they don't want to communicate with you and they're pushing back, if you're trying to communicate, that's a red flag. That's a red flag. Now, also, with that said, there is a level of, I had a client ask me one time if they could come down and sit with my team, at our office while they work on the site. Well, anybody who runs a business that has employees understands that it doesn't really work that way. We're working on multiple things at once. It's kind of it's almost like an assembly line where we move, into the design department, out of the design department, over to the development department, and they get to it in their flow of work that they have for the day. So it would be a huge disruption if everybody that was working on your project had to come sit around you while you try to, and we're developing the site as you're trying to explain it or get it out of your head. So there's, to set the appropriate expectation, there's a level at which, is appropriate for communication. But if you're getting pushback and I got this, you don't worry about it, I'll show it to you when it's done, that might be a red flag. You want to make sure that you develop that idea before, before you ever start talking to a web developer. So.
And you can practice with somebody else that's not your web designer and try and describe what you want. And it'll help you see some of the stumbling blocks that you're going to run into. And one of the things I found to be useful when you're helping people with that are feeling words, funnily enough. If you say, what do you want people to feel? when they come to your website. That can kind of help steer a direction too, you know. Also, of course, and you'll probably talk about this a little bit, or maybe you didn't because there's not time, but just be really clear on who your target market is, because that will also make a difference on how you're going to design your website.
Absolutely.
You know, if you're into the steel and the
Mhm.
you know, sharp edges and stuff that Mitch was talking about earlier, you know, that might be a high tech on your
Yeah, if
tire
you're selling
company or
power
something like
tools or
that. That's,
something,
yeah, you're not going to, you know, appeal to women.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
if you're
you just wanna
selling
be really
women's
clear.
clothing, you probably don't want diamond plate steel in the back of your.
exactly.
Who knows?
Who knows these days?
But yeah, that's absolutely that's an important part to understand going into the process what you're looking for, and so you know the education on this level. I mean, even just talking about this here, you know, if you were to get an opportunity to go to a Web Ready Blueprint workshop where you actually dive deeply into each one of those aspects, it prepares you well to be able to build a successful website. But,
Which can save you a lot of money.
yeah, it can.
If you have that package and you're prepared when you go to them, rather than trying to figure it out as you go along.
Yeah.
And also, one of the biggest stumbling blocks, time-wise, for being on the web design side of it and development side of it is that, number one, if you're not clear, they certainly can't be clear. And I'd say the number one holdup, you know, because if you've got a good team, you can put out a website pretty quickly, but the number one holdup is almost always the client, because they don't have content ready or they don't know what they want. So that'll
Absolutely.
speed things up immensely as well if you're really clear before you go to a web designer.
Yeah, I've got to agree with that. I've built
You have
several
experience?
websites, and the more prepared you are when you go in,
Mhm.
the more affordable your website's going to be.
Absolutely. And there's no, as much as we'd like there to be, there's not a web developer or web designer out there that can read your mind. And sometimes we kind of expect that. We think that we'll be able to communicate what we're thinking, but we can't when we're trying to express it through words. So get it down on paper, write down your content, get your colors together. Colors are an important thing. I'll touch on this real quick. You know, if you've got a certain type of blue on your logo, make sure that you understand there's different codes that, you know, like for example on the web, we use the hex code system. Well, there's a color code for this blue. There's a color code for royal blue that's slightly different. There's a color code for this color of brown. So any color you can think of, there is a hex color code associated with that. That you can say it's this hex code, and it's just 6 digits, a mix of letters and numbers that you can give to your developer and say, this is the color. Oh, great. Copy paste right into the code, or you know, whatever the case might be. But that's the easiest way to do it. Pick your colors. Know what colors you're going to have going into it. Know, you know, if your logo has a certain color, use that color on your site. Don't just say blue. Don't just say green. Use the same color. So.
And there's some places that you can go for some free resources on that will also show you, because you might think you know the color, but you have it in a RGB. So it is RGB.
Yeah, you've got a different color code, RGB
Right.
or CMYK or. Yeah.
Right, because those apply to different usages. Printing, you know, codes would be different than the ones for the web, etc.
Mhm.
So there's sites you can go and you can pick out colors. They'll also show you what complementary colors there are and things like that if you're trying to develop a logo or pick colors for your website and things like that too. And I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, a great resource for that, software-wise, is Photoshop. Photoshop has an engine built in if you have access to Photoshop, where you can use the color picker tool, grab the color, open it up, and it will tell you the CMYK, the RGB. It'll tell you the Pantone color, even if you're doing, you know, spot color printing on like banners and stuff like that. It'll tell you the hex code. So all those things are important to know, because you're going to need different codes in the different areas that you're going. So if you've got your website and all of a sudden you want to create a banner, but you want to use the same color blue, well, go to your website, take a little snapshot of the color, put it in Photoshop, use that color picker. It'll tell you the hex code, which you already knew, but then it'll also tell you the Pantone code, which you're going to need to make a banner.
So that blue is consistent across all your platforms, whether they're printed or on air or on the web or whatever it might be. And I've got a couple of great resources for that. I'm just blanking out on what they are. One thing you can try, it seems like some of the paint companies have those, where they'll convert them as well, and they'll also show you the colors. So you can try, it's not who I use. I am just totally blanking.
Well,
We'll try and post that in the comments later.
Yeah, we'll post it in the comments here, but you can just either Google search or go to like your app on your phone and just use the term color picker.
Yeah.
And you'll find all sorts of free resources that will,
Yep.
they're basically standalone little things that do the one piece that he's talking about in Photoshop. They're usually free.
Yeah.
They usually have 10 different banner ads around the perimeter of them, but they're usually free.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So,
But you want to do that. 'Cause
yeah.
It'll help you be consistent.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as you're kind of working through that, and you start to get into the design and functionality of your site, one of the things I always recommend is find sites that you like online. If you're into the minimalist look, and let's say that you like Apple.com, and that's a big one we get quite often is, hey, just make it look like Apple.com. Usually the answer I say is, well, if you want Apple.com, I hope you have $3-4 million to spend on this project. But no, but from a design element, Apple does a great job of that minimalist approach that's popular right now. A lot of white, big pictures, very saturated colors, very little text, and they pull it off really well. So if that's something you like, tell us, hey, I like this about Apple.com. I like this about, Macy's.com. So pick different sites that you have online, and a lot of times your competitors might have things that you like. I really like this about my competitor, and here's their website. That way your developer can get on, your designer can get on, and look at those things you like and incorporate that into your site. It also works just as well for things you don't like. Someone in my industry is, or a lot of the players in my industry, they're approaching it this way, and I don't like that. I think that, that's a stale way to approach this. Here's all their websites, and you can see what I'm talking about. Well, then you can collaborate with your designer or your developer and make sure that you're approaching that in a fresh way so that they don't make the same mistakes that all your competitors made. So I would say at least 3 sites to use as examples to pass along, and specifics about those sites, not just, I like Apple.com, just make me that, that site. Have specifics about it that you like and want to pass on.
One thing too is don't just think about the way it looks, think about functionality. So if there's some function on a website that you really like, then note that as well, or some widget or something that it does. Pay attention to those things when you're looking at them as well.
Yes.
We had some comments on the tip for the color pickers. Adam Music pointed out there's an app, a plugin for Firefox called Colorzilla that is a dropper, and you can pick anything on any website.
That's cool.
Using Colorzilla, he says. And then I just remembered that the picker that I use the most is actually PicMonkey. They have a color picker in PicMonkey, and that's a free app, very similar to Photoshop, but a lot easier to use.
Yeah.
You don't need an education. So if you're not a graphic designer like me, handy tool and totally free.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Thank you.
That's great.
So, absolutely. And I can't stress enough, making sure you're branding consistent is very important. So it works the other way too, right? If you've already got printing, if you've already got flyers and business cards, then make sure your website matches those. And you can go the opposite direction with it. Get with your printer, find out what CMYK he used or what Pantone color he used when he printed your business cards, and work that process backwards. So on all these, free color pickers we're talking about, you can work it both ways. So now after we've kind of gotten into building the shell and what, I like this about this site and that about that site, and we've incorporated it all into your website. And keep in mind that all that stuff can be done on any level. If you're working on a custom website, you can plan on dropping anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, maybe even more, on a custom website.
Meaning where they've written the code
they write
for
the
all
code
of it.
from scratch, and everything's designed from scratch, and all that. Whether you're working on that level or whether you're working on the level of I'm looking for a really nice WordPress template that fits what I'm looking for. That's still an important process to go through, is understanding I like this element, I don't like that element. So still go through that exercise even if you're looking on kind of that, that more cost conscious level. Because there's templates out there that have a lot of these functions that you like, and they're very inexpensive, and a web developer will usually take that and plug that in for a very nominal fee. So
and they're able to customize those.
Exactly.
And when you pay somebody, a good web developer, a lot of money to do a custom site, that's one thing. It's very expensive, but if you've got the budget and all that, that's great. But be very careful too about going to just a one-person shop, or web designer, because a lot of these kids come out of school and they've been inundated with the best thing to do is do a custom PHP site, and they all write code differently.
Yeah.
And one of the worst things that I see over and over again, and you probably do too, is someone who's paid someone to create a custom site per se at that level, and nobody else can make head or tail of their code, and you're going to spend more money having somebody try and unsnarl what they've done and figure it out than you would to have just started with like a WordPress template that's customized.
Yep.
A WordPress template or some of these other things like Joomla or some of these different platforms are open, and lots of different developers can work within those parameters, and lots of developers develop plugins and things for these different templates. So if you're on a budget, that's a really good way to go, and you can still have a fully customized look, because one template can have 100 different looks, depending if you have somebody good that can customize the template. So just something else to
That's a great
keep in
point.
mind.
And to go down that road unless it's really necessary. You can do amazing things with WordPress these days. There are awesome templates out there that that are beautiful. And I mean, heck, if you want something custom, still build it on WordPress, so it's something that someone else can understand if you have to take it to a different developer.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But have them, like Leslie said, have them just customize. There are themes out there that are designed to be customized, if that makes sense. There are themes out there that are designed.
Hundreds and thousands of different options and choices within
Exactly.
one thing.
Exactly.
So that's why I say,
go down that route. That's A, going to be a lot cheaper, and B, a lot more scalable.
and it's a great way for you to figure out what you want too, because you could go to WordPress and you can look at all these different themes, and they'll give you different ideas on how your site can look as well. So
Yeah.
that's another great place to go for ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that your site's all ready to go and you've got the shell and you're ready to start plugging content in, it's important to start focusing on, okay, look back at your sitemap that we talked about. I've got these pages. Now what's going to go on those pages? I need pictures. I need text. These are things that you should know before you get into the development process.
And these are things nobody else can do for you, the business owner. It's your business, and you have to be involved. You can't delegate that. You have to have that prepared.
Yep.
So that's going to be the number one thing that's going to hold you out in getting your website done.
Yeah.
So think
just,
about that ahead of time.
you can't avoid it. Just plan on knocking out your content ahead of time.
Yeah.
Um,
Another thing we cover in the workshop is really helping you think
Yeah.
that through and
Yes.
understand what call to actions are, what kinds of things you need on your homepage to get people to take the action and engage, in the way that you want them to, and those kinds of things. Because you only have 7 seconds or less when they hit your homepage to get their attention and get them to stay
Get 'em
and do
started.
something. And so you have to have something on there that is going to engage them, or something that's going to direct them to where you want them to go. So
Yeah.
really important to think about those things.
Another piece of good advice from Adam Music. He says, pick a font that doesn't make you look like a crazy person. Comic Sans, question mark?
Yeah. Yeah. No
Yeah.
kidding. Yeah, and there. I mean, nowadays because Google has their Google fonts now. There's a lot of fonts to choose from. Again, it goes back to your branding. What message are you trying to get across? And remember that it's more than just the words on the page. We've talked a lot about colors and design, but yeah, the font. I mean, that's the personality, right? That's the body language of your site. So you gotta be paying attention to really every nuance of your site. And is it helping? It's either helping or it's hurting your brand. Which one is it doing?
Mhm.
And ask yourself that on every design element. Is this helping or is it hurting my brand? And that's why I caution against going down the road of like the free GoDaddy template builder and the really cheap side of the template builders. Spend $40 extra and get a WordPress template that's robust and beautiful. So
There's something else I was just thinking of around that too. What was it? It was important. If it comes to me, can I interrupt you?
yeah, absolutely,
It's important on that.
absolutely.
Oh,
Let's chat about. Go ahead and feel free to interrupt me if it comes back.
Yeah.
But we'll move on to choosing a good partner.
oh, I know what it was. Real fast before we move
Yeah.
on.
Let's do it.
Images. When you're thinking about your content, don't just think about the written things and call to actions and all that, but pick your images. There's lots of places you can get free images, or you can go to iStock or Big Stock or Deposit Photos or all kinds of free photo site stuff, or where you can pay a very minimal amount to pick out photos if you don't have your own images. But if you will pick those out ahead of time as well, or as you know what you're talking about, find the images that speak to you, that really represent you the way you want it to be, that's going to save a lot of time and money because you're paying a web designer. If it takes a lot more time to build your site because of your indecisiveness, you're going to spend more. So that's another thing that you can pick out ahead yourself that will really save you a lot of money too.
Yeah, absolutely. And videos, knowing what videos you want to embed on the site, along with images, any kind of media that you want to end up using on your site. It's important to kind of have that.
Okay, so speaking of media, to tie back what we talked about earlier today, HOAs. What if I want a page that has my most recent HOA? People can go there, see it live when it's live, and it stays the recorded version until I do the next one.
Well, those I believe you said that the HOAs they turn automatically into YouTube videos.
Yeah,
at
but
the
what
end of
she's
it.
wanting is to not have to reblog everyone, which is what I recommend you do.
Uh-huh.
But you wouldn't do that on a front page. You do that within the blog portion. So what you're
Yeah, I'm not
talking
talking
about
front page,
is
I'm talking
a
a page
page,
on the website.
and all you have to do, and these guys could grab it really easy, is create a good playlist for your HOA,
Mhm.
and just make sure that you add those each
Embed
time
the
to that playlist. All they do is embed the code for the playlist. The newest one is the one that's on front and comes up when you get there. That's it, and they're in timed order. So when you're done watching that one, it automatically rolls to the next, and every HOA you've ever produced is going to show up.
And is that a custom website design, or is that available within
We can do
WordPress?
that. It's a copy paste into WordPress. I mean, usually if
Simple.
most people should give that to you for free. If you're buying, website or even WordPress integration from a designer or developer, that's something that they should really do for you. Really. Or you can do it yourself even. I mean, in WordPress, it's easy enough. It's copy and paste from YouTube. They'll give you the embed code if you click on share and then embed. There's the embed code. You pull it with copy function and paste it into WordPress. Hit save and it's live.
And that's another thing that we're going to be covering on a future, Hangout on Air. Jen Foster is going to come talk about video marketing and the different platforms and how to utilize that
effectively for your search. So
Sweet.
we'll cover that too.
And in fact, WordPress is so well aligned with YouTube that you don't even have to go to the extra step of the embed code, which then means that you've got to get into the HTML side of your WordPress. I don't know if you knew this. You actually can just pull a YouTube URL, and if it says youtube.com in the URL, it embeds it into WordPress automatically. Don't even have to use an embed code.
Yep.
And you can put it right in the regular copy.
Yep.
And it puts it in there.
WordPress is
That's about, what, 9 months, a year old? It's a very
it's,
cool feature.
It's in the 4.0 update, I believe. So.
Yeah,
Mhm.
cool feature.
Yeah, it is. It's neat stuff. So, so let's move on to talking about making sure that you're choosing a good web partner. Now, at some level, I recommend getting professional help on building your website. Now, that's not to say that you need to build a custom site, but you're gonna need, with the stuff we talked about with hosting, with making sure that your WordPress is set up correctly so that there's not errors every time someone hits a page and that you don't have false links and stuff like that. It's good to have a web partner.
Updates,
Yes.
WordPress, so that
Updates,
your site doesn't
all that stuff.
degenerate, everything.
It also prevents you from having a learning curve that's this big to having a learning curve that's 3-4 times as big.
When I bought some domains from GoDaddy, I received a couple of different emails from web designers that came from, they work with GoDaddy templates.
Mhm.
Are those, if you're just,
So if you had done private when you bought those,
I
then
wouldn't.
nobody would have known how to find you.
okay,
But because you were public, you'll get a lot of that.
so that's how.
when you buy domains or when you put a site up, you're going to be contacted by different companies that do that.
And they're not exactly partners. Just like if somebody calls you up and says they're with Google and they're going to help you with your Google business page, they're not with Google. They're with an SEO marketing company.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So just
Exactly.
be aware of that and be ready for it.
Yeah, so it probably wasn't, GoDaddy necessarily, or even a GoDaddy partner. It's just that
They'll call themselves
Yeah.
that, yeah.
they'll call themselves that to try to get you to trust them. So, again, I find those templates a little on the cheap side, and I worry about the effect that might have on your branding. Maybe I'm wrong in
Depends.
certain cases.
Sometimes that's a really inexpensive place for people to start,
Right.
and then
Right.
they can move up from there.
Yeah. So,
That everything has its place. Is it ideal? No.
Yeah.
Definitely not. Having a good web partner that's affordable is your best bet, for
Right.
sure, always. But, you got to start where you're at, right? The important thing is getting started. So if that's where somebody needs to start, then that can be, a reasonable option for them to get started and at least get out there and hopefully generate some additional money, and then they can, find a better web partner, to help them progress to the next level. So
absolutely.
there's a time and place for everything.
Absolutely. So we talked about keeping, having your strategy in place, make sure that it's there, make sure that you get multiple bids. I mean, understand the pricing, if it's on a simple level and you're paying someone $49 a month, make sure that you understand the value that you're getting and then compare apples to apples elsewhere.
And you're talking hosting now, not.
Yeah,
design.
hosting, if
I
you
just, when you said 49.
yeah, with the hosting, with going over to the development side as well. If you're paying someone $700 to set up WordPress and make sure that your templates install correctly and that they help you import your content, and that's a fair price. Some people may be a little bit
It's a
cheaper
good
than
price.
that. Some people may be way more expensive than that.
And you'll find that you'll get the same thing for a broad range of prices.
Yeah.
So that's when we're saying, be really careful, and when we're talking about how to pick a
Yeah.
partner.
And drill down to, can I work with this person? Not just are they the cheapest. Are they communicating
Or the
with
best.
me? Do we communicate? Is there good communication between us? Do we speak the same language? Type thing. So understanding that stuff is important. I mentioned I always recommend going with a team of people. That way, there's not one point of failure. You have, if you need to, you can reach out to multiple people within that company. And the benefits of that are you have varied skill sets. There's usually never a jack of all trades that's amazing at all of them. and web design and development a lot of times can be broad enough to where you're probably not going to get everything in one person, that they know how to do everything you're going to need, especially if you've got a little more robust of a project. So, and then look at reviews and portfolios and stuff like that online. That's important as well.
Yeah, it's like when you hire somebody for a job, you know, if you don't call the references and they turn out to be terrible, that's on you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So go look at their work, you know, ask them for references.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things. Yeah.
Also, I think it's important to find a place that can manage your hosting with helping you set up your website. That's something that we've integrated into our company because I feel that it is important, and ownership of the company feels that it is important to have kind of a one call away, regardless of the problem. Not, oh well, we'll pass the buck. That's the host's fault, or that's the domain registrar's fault, or that's so we feel that is kind of an important thing to have, and so make sure you understand what level of support that your partner is providing. We talked about the things that are important that go along with hosting. With that, are they providing that hack protection in what you're paying them? Are they providing the consistent backups of your site? What kind of technical support do they offer? Is it only by email, or is there somebody I can call? Is it chat, whatever?
Chat.
Yeah, exactly. Am I getting content changes in what I'm paying for? These are good questions, and some will include certain things and others won't. It's not that one way's right or one way's wrong. It's just important to understand what you're getting for the value.
Really important to clarify those things up front.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you might pay more. I mean, that's one other thing that will happen sometimes is somebody will hold you hostage for every revision.
Yeah.
And so you want to make sure you're real clear with them about what you're getting for what price and what revisions will cost. Negotiate those things up front as much as you can.
Yeah.
Well, that's a question I have. When you're partnered with a web developer, how common is it to, like I as a client, would want access to my content?
Mm-hmm.
Because my text, for instance, is going to change. I'm not going to change the layout or the color or positioning of pictures or that kind of stuff, but I want to be able to change verbiage on the different pages, maybe on a regular basis. I don't want to pay you to do it. I want to have access and do it. Will web developers typically partner and do that, or is that typically, no, this is my code, I don't want you messing with it? How does that work?
It varies, and that's an important question to ask when you're looking to partner with somebody. Usually, if you have a site that's built on a content management system like WordPress or Joomla or something like that, it's really easy for them to give you access to go in and make those changes. And that's one of the benefits also of using a system like that is it's easy to do that. You don't have to know code, stuff like that. So you just have a username and password where you just jump in and can make those changes on the fly, and don't need to pay somebody to
yeah. And you can have them set the admin levels at where you're comfortable. So if you're really nervous about making a mistake in code, because one little character change, if you are touching code, can mess all kinds of things up. And so, if you're nervous about that or whatever, you can even have them just set you at an editor level and then, just say, okay, stay in visual or, different things like that. So they can set those levels at whatever the client is comfortable with too. It's a protection to the client in that sense. But always too, make sure that you protect yourself in terms of the ownership and the access to your site and those kinds of things. Don't do it in a way that's going to allow someone to shut you out.
Yeah.
So that's another important thing, because there's been horror stories from clients as well about that, where they just get completely shut out of their own site that they've paid thousands of dollars for.
Yeah.
Well, and how does that work? Because if I've purchased a domain and I were to go to you and want to partner as a web developer,
mm-hmm.
well, you're going to set up the website. I'm going to provide you all the information, but I don't necessarily have access. You're hosting it. You're providing, you're putting the content and everything out there.
Mm-hmm.
How am I still the owner of that? I mean, how does that work if I do want to change companies or web developers?
Yeah, and that's important to understand as well. When you are partnering with somebody on the level of, who does the content and the code belong to? Some web development companies, they own the code. You're paying them simply, to create it and to use it. Others, that you own the code. So you want to make sure you understand that, first of all. Secondly, if you're paying them on a monthly basis to maintain your site, do the hosting and maintenance and all that stuff, you want to know if you're in a contract or not. But this is why it's important to be the owner of your domain. Because if all else fails, if they own the code and you got in a pickle there and you're in a contract and you end up just having to cut ties and cancel the credit card it's on, all that fun stuff, that big headache. At the end of the day, if you own your domain, you can go over here to this web development company, hire them to build your website, and when it's done, you just point the domain over there. So this company still thinks that they've got you hostage. Well, no, they don't, because you just pointed the domain over there, and now you've got a new website.
That's what you've got to make sure you keep control of, though, is the ability of where to point the domain.
Yep.
So that's the thing
that's why we want
keep in mind.
You to register the domain, not your web partner. You register it, you own it.
Right, but you can also set up levels of admin too, like if you were to go through something like GoDaddy, there's a way that you can set it up so that you own the domain and you have administrative rights where they can't go in and they don't have the...
Can't take it hostage.
Yeah, they can't hold you hostage. They would have the ability to, change the DNS or, those different kinds of things, but they can't change anything about the ownership or anything like that. So if they did point it or try and lock you out or whatever, as long as you've created a backup, and there's a lot of things around that too, then you'll have all the files and you can still protect yourself. So there's ways to do that as well, and you can talk to whoever you're buying the domain from about the admin levels that you can set up there to do that. Because there's also, you can set up as just FTP access versus not being able to point the domain, and then you have someone else help you with that at the hosting company or the domain, just registrar company. So there's ways to protect yourself in that, and you can check with your registrar about what they provide for that.
I think the time is pretty much shot on this subject, but preparing to build a website, I think those are very important steps to remember as you're preparing to do that. Now, I did want to throw out today, BizIngenuity through WebReady Blueprint, we usually have a $2,500 fee for setting up a WordPress site on a customizable template. We do offer now, from a hosting perspective, we do offer all the things that I talked about: the hosting, the email addresses, the hack and virus protection, that if anything happens, we take care of that. It's not your problem. The daily backups of your website, technical support and compatibility monitoring to make sure that WordPress and the servers are up to date, and everything that you need, to make sure is up to date is taken care of. We've priced that out competitively. If you were to parse all that out and price each one individually, you're looking at $170 to $200 a month worth of services there. We've got it at $49 a month with no contract. We are confident in our services, and we take care of our clients, and that's why clients stay with us. So we don't need to tie you to the ground in a contract. Now, the $2,500 fee for setting up the website, for building that for you, for importing the content, making sure that it's working, customizing the design to your liking. Through WebReady Blueprint, we can offer that at $1,000. So that is a limited time offer. So if you're interested in that, you can email me at mitch@bizingenuity.com, or for those of you who are here, you can talk to me in person, or call me, just ask for my card.
And we're going to post a link for that as well.
In the description, yes.
So that you can just go to that link and get connected there too.
Yep. So thanks, guys.
Right.
Nice.
Yay! Thanks,
Thank you.
Mitch.
Yeah.
And tune in same time next week.